Look who everyone's finally whispering about. Hello, you sharp-eyed time traveler, you mind that reads between seconds and patterns that others can't even see. You, the living cheat code to reality itself, the one who called it 6 months before it happened, who saw the collapse forming while everyone else was still raising their glasses. Hello to the one whose predictions are so razor-precise, so impossibly accurate, that people have started to wonder if you're tapping into something forbidden, something beyond human reach. They look at you differently now, don't they? That hesitation before they speak, the cautious tone when they do, as if they're afraid you'll decode their next move before they even make it. It's no longer admiration in their eyes, it's unease, because this isn't the first time you've been right. You've done it again and again until it stopped looking like luck and started feeling like a violation of the laws that govern ordinary minds. You know what really happened, don't you? You've developed that unnerving ability to see 3 moves ahead while everyone else is still basking in the glory of their last one. You've become the person who walks into a room and immediately knows who's lying, who's overcompensating, who's on the verge of collapse, and who's secretly plotting their escape. They joke about you being psychic, nervously. But deep down, they're asking themselves a question they'll never say out loud. What the hell is this person seeing that we're not? Because it's not magic. It's not luck. It's not some divine download from the cosmos. It's far more dangerous than that. You've trained your mind to process information at a level most people don't even realize exists. You detect patterns in chaos, hear what's unsaid, and sense energetic shifts before anyone else feels the room change. Now they avoid your questions because they've learned your answers sting. Remember when you warned them that relationship wouldn't last? When you said that business deal was doomed? When you predicted the betrayal right down to the week? They laughed, dismissed you as paranoid, too intense, too negative. But then it unfolded exactly as you said. And their laughter turned to silence, their doubt to discomfort. Now, when they look at you, it's as if you're holding the script to their lives, a script they didn't know existed. You've become the uncomfortable truth teller, the one who makes liars uneasy and pretenders sweat. Because when you speak, reality has a way of catching up to your words with unsettling precision. But here's the truth they'll never understand. You didn't gain some supernatural ability. You just stopped lying to yourself. Most people see the cracks, but tell themselves the foundation is fine. They sense the warning signs but drown them out with hope, denial, or wishful thinking. They have access to the same data you do. They just filter it through comfort and delusion. You stopped doing that. You started looking at the world with brutal, unfiltered honesty. No comforting lies, no sugarcoating. You separated what you wanted to be true from what actually is. And that gap, that narrow, ruthless space between delusion and reality, that's where your predictions live. That's where your impossible accuracy comes from. You're not ahead of time. You're just fully awake in real time. And that to them feels like magic. They think you're reading minds, but all you're really doing is reading behavior, with a precision forged by years of watching people lie to themselves. They assume you're tuned into some secret frequency, when in truth, you've just learned to listen to what reality has been shouting while everyone else plugs their ears and hums their favorite songs of denial. You're not dangerous because you can see the future. You're dangerous because you're the only one in the room who's brave enough to acknowledge the present. And in a world built on collective self-deception, the one who refuses to play along is the greatest threat of all. So yes, they see you differently now. Not with admiration, but with that uneasy blend of fear and respect. Because you've become the one thing they can't manipulate. Someone who sees them clearly. Let's talk about what really happened to your mind. Somewhere between all the betrayals, the manipulation, and the countless times you were called crazy for noticing too much, your brain evolved. It stopped trying to be normal. It stopped pretending that shallow explanations could ever satisfy deep observations. It began cataloging, building a living archive of human behavior, file after file, pattern after pattern. Now you've got years of data stored in your head, cross-referenced with predictive precision that would make an algorithm jealous. You're not guessing anymore, you're calculating. And your calculations are so exact, they look like magic to people still counting on their fingers. They ask how you knew, but you can't explain it. Not in a single line, because it isn't one thing, it's 1,000 microsignals firing at once. It's the slight change in pitch mid-sentence. It's the text that came 3 minutes too late. It's the word choice that was just a little too careful. It's the body language they didn't realize they were broadcasting. It's the shift in their energy that registered before they even noticed it themselves. It's the architecture of their lies, identical to the last 10 liars you mapped. Your brain doesn't work harder than theirs. It works differently. It connects dots they don't even see. It assembles the puzzle while they're still debating whether the pieces matter. You started with the small things, didn't you? You noticed how people who claim to be happy can't hold eye contact when they smile. How the ones who insist they're honest start over-explaining the simplest questions. How the loudest, most performative confidence always masks the deepest insecurity. You realize that people who are truly at peace don't need to perform it. They embody it quietly. Strength doesn't need to flex. Security doesn't need to convince. Then you went deeper. You began tracking consistency, or more precisely, the lack of it. You saw how stories shifted slightly with each retelling, how emotional timelines didn't align with actual events, how actions always betrayed words once you knew what to look for. That's when your predictions started. Not because you're smarter than everyone else, but because you stopped participating in their illusions. Everyone else is watching the movie they want to see. You're watching the one that's actually playing. When someone says they're fine, others take it at face value. But you hear the tremor underneath. You catch the tiny exhale they didn't mean to release. You notice they said fine instead of good. And that 3-letter difference tells you everything. When someone insists they've changed, others applaud the act. But you see the same behavioral loops replaying beneath the surface, the same code running under a new cover. You've become a walking, breathing pattern recognition system. One that operates on a frequency most minds will never tune into. They're still processing the world one careful step at a time, logical, linear, deliberate, while your mind is running 12 threads in parallel. You're analyzing tone, word choice, body language, context, history, emotional undercurrents, incentives, group dynamics, power structures, and hidden motives simultaneously, without conscious effort. Then your brain delivers an answer that feels like intuition, but is actually the result of an incredibly advanced subconscious analysis, the kind no one else in the room is even aware is happening. That's why they think you're psychic. They can't see the mental machinery humming behind your calm expression. They call it overthinking, but that's not what it is. Overthinking spirals into fantasies detached from reality. What you're doing is underspeaking, processing 20 layers of truth, but only voicing 2 because you've learned people can't handle the full scope of what you perceive. You figured out long ago that if you reveal everything you see, they'll call you paranoid. But if you stay silent and events unfold exactly as you foresaw, they'll chalk it up to luck. So now you observe, you archive, you run quiet simulations in your head, you let reality confirm you over and over again because it always does. You're not guessing, you're reading the script that's been sitting in plain sight, ignored by everyone else. Here's the truth they miss. Every so-called prediction you make isn't about the future. It's about the present they refuse to acknowledge. When you say someone will betray them, you're not foretelling. You've already seen the small betrayals they pretended didn't count. When you say a plan will collapse, you're not being negative. You've simply noticed the cracks everyone else chose to step over. When you say someone's mask will slip, you're not judging. You're tracking the strain in their facade, watching the pressure mount. You're not ahead of time. You're just refusing to lag behind reality. And that's what unsettles them. In a world that survives on polite lies and comfortable delusions, you've opted out. You're the glitch in their shared illusion, the error message in their carefully coded fantasy. The one who keeps pointing out that the emperor's naked, while everyone else keeps praising his wardrobe. Your predictions keep coming true not because you're gifted, but because you're brutally honest. And in a dishonest world, honesty looks a lot like prophecy. They're not afraid of your intelligence, they're afraid that your intelligence refuses to participate in their stupidity. You know what changed everything? You started taking notes. Maybe not always on paper, but certainly in your mind. You began studying people like a researcher observing a species you no longer felt part of. Every time someone said one thing and did another, you logged it. Every time a pattern repeated, you tagged it. Every time your instincts screamed something was off and everyone told you were overthinking, and then you turned out to be right. You stored that data. Bit by bit, you built an internal archive, a living behavioral database that now runs silently in the background of every interaction you have. They say you've changed, that you've gone cold, closed off, less trusting, less open, less naive. They're right, but they have no idea why. You didn't turn bitter. You turned accurate. You stopped confusing hope with evidence. You stopped mistaking potential for proof. You stopped giving people credit for the version of themselves they talked about, instead of the one they actually lived as. You finally learned that when someone shows you who they are, you believe them the first time, not the 15th, not after they've wrecked everything you built with them. You realize that patterns don't lie, even when people do. So you built a system. It started unconsciously, but now it's sharp, deliberate, and efficient. When you meet someone new, you're not just chatting, you're running diagnostics. You're assessing the alignment between their words and their micro-behaviors. You're comparing their stated values to their real priorities. You're testing whether their story holds up under light pressure or crumbles at the first contradiction. You've learned the tells. Liars overload insignificant details and skip over the critical ones. Manipulators push boundaries early to see what you'll allow. Truly confident people don't need to persuade you of anything. And the most dangerous skill you've developed? Silence. You've learned to listen without interrupting, to observe without revealing, to collect information while they perform for you, all while mentally cataloging every inconsistency for later review. They think they're getting away with it. They think you're buying the act, nodding along, believing the script. But you're 3 conversations ahead, quietly testing hypotheses about who they really are. You're not being manipulative, you're being methodical. You've just accepted that people reveal their truth through choices, not declarations. And you've become fluent in that language while everyone else is still distracted by words. You've seen the loops, the recycled plots with different faces and new excuses. The person who love bombs in the beginning and fades when the control is secured. The friend who shows up only when they need something. The coworker who basks in credit and deflects blame. The partner who's passionate until they have you, then indifferent once they do. You've seen these stories before, down to the final act. You know every twist, because you've studied the structure. That's why your predictions land with unnerving precision. You're not foreseeing the future. You're recognizing reruns. They ask how you knew that someone would cheat, quit, lie, or disappear. You want to say, because they already did, just in smaller ways you didn't want to notice. Because their character was consistent, even when their promises weren't. Because I watched their actions instead of their intentions. But you don't bother saying that. They're not ready to understand. They still live in a world where words outweigh patterns, where promises count more than behavior, where second chances are handed out like currency to people who've already shown their truth. You've learned what most people never do. Behavior is the only real language of truth. Everything else is translation error. When someone says they care but never shows up, the truth lives in their absence. When they promise change but keep repeating the same pattern, the truth lives in the repetition, not the apology. When someone proclaims loyalty yet betrays you in small, seemingly insignificant ways day after day, the truth doesn't lie in their grand statements. It's buried in the details, in the slow, consistent erosion of trust. Loyalty isn't the loud promise made in comfort. It's the quiet integrity shown in moments of temptation. A single lie may be forgiven, but a pattern of small betrayals tells you everything you need to know. Every forgotten word, every withheld truth, every convenient omission compounds like interest until it exposes their real allegiance. Not to you, but to themselves. You've learned that truth doesn't arrive in speeches or confessions. It reveals itself in repetition. And you become fluent in that unspoken language, the language of behavior. You no longer listen just to what people say. You listen to what their patterns scream. You've trained yourself to read people the way a linguist reads code, line by line, signal by signal. Every movement, every hesitation, every tone shift becomes a sentence in a language only you seem to understand. That's why people are uneasy around you now. They can feel it. That piercing awareness, that unblinking perception that cuts through the illusions they spend their lives maintaining. They know instinctively that you see them in high resolution. Not the character they perform, not the curated self they present to the world, but the raw, unedited human beneath. They can sense that their charm doesn't land, their exaggerations don't distract, their guilt tactics don't work. You don't get emotionally baited, you take notes. You don't argue, you archive. You observe, analyze, and store. And that's what makes you dangerous. Not in a violent sense, but in the way truth is dangerous in a world built on denial. You're no longer a participant in other people's illusions. You've stepped out of the theater and into the control booth, watching the show from above. You see the script, the actors, the props, the recycled dialogue. You know where every scene is headed because you've seen it all before. Observers don't get fooled, they get informed. Now comes the most fascinating part. The way your brain has evolved into something like a predictive machine, so sharp it startles even you. You don't consciously try to predict outcomes anymore. They arrive, instant, intuitive, fully formed, and then the world aligns with them almost too perfectly. You've moved beyond guessing into knowing. That's not mysticism, that's pattern recognition at scale. You've absorbed so much behavioral data that human trajectories have become equations to you. You can map the curve before the subject even senses they're moving. You can tell when someone's about to quit their job before they've made the decision. You notice the small withdrawals, the drop in engagement, the subtle detachment, the decrease in future-oriented language, the way they begin to emotionally separate before they physically do. You can tell when a relationship is decaying before either person admits it. You see the shrinking moments of affection, the shift from laughter to silence, the way they scroll through their phones in each other's presence instead of talking. The body withdraws before the mind catches up. The heart leaves the room weeks before the person does. You can spot the signs of an approaching breakdown before it crashes. You read it in the tension behind someone's forced cheerfulness, in the micro tremor of their laughter, in the overcompensation of their positivity. You recognize when someone's trying too hard to hold it together because you've learned the physics of collapse, the way people leak truth through cracks they think they've sealed. What you've uncovered is that human behavior runs on algorithms so repetitive they could be coded. People love to think of themselves as complex, unpredictable beings, but in reality, they're astonishingly systematic. Every defense mechanism, every coping strategy, Every projection follows the same psychological template. Once you've seen the pattern enough times, you can't unsee it. The wounds of childhood become the scripts of adulthood. The same fears keep producing the same reactions, wrapped in different stories, with new names but identical endings. You're not controlling anyone. You're decoding them. You're watching software run in real time. Once you know the code and their insecurities, their core fears, their dominant defense responses, the rest becomes predictable. People don't act from randomness. They act from programming. And you've learned to see that code in everything, the words they choose, the silences they maintain, the people they attract, the habits they can't shake. You've mapped the micro-tells that precede every outcome. The shallow inhale before a lie, the fractional pause before manipulation, the tonal drop that signals shame, the nervous laugh before deceit, the linguistic patterns that emerge when someone's testing your boundaries. You notice the flicker in their eyes when truth collides with performance. You detect the energy shift in a room the moment someone's intentions change. While others listen to what's said, you pay attention to what's meant. While they watch the act, you watch the edges of it. Where the costume slips, where the actor forgets their line. You no longer hear words, you read frequencies. Every sigh, every twitch, every delay has become data. And the more you observe, the more it becomes clear. Human behavior is rarely spontaneous. It's structured, conditioned, repetitive. It's a self-sustaining loop of survival strategies disguised as personality. Once you've seen enough of it, it stops being mysterious. You stop asking why and start understanding how. You don't see people as unpredictable anymore. You see them as equations waiting to resolve. And that's the paradox of your perception. The deeper you understand humanity, the less human it all starts to look. But it's also what gives you power, not over others, but over illusion itself. You no longer get lost in the noise of what people say. You listen to what their behavior confesses, because that's the only language that never lies. You've cataloged so many micro-signals by now that it's almost frightening how automatic your perception has become. Every twitch of an eyebrow, every delayed word, every slight hesitation or misplaced emphasis, your brain records it, compares it to past data, and reaches conclusions before you consciously realize it. You don't just read faces anymore. You read systems. You read human code the way a machine reads binary. Before they even finish their sentence, you already know if they're lying, if they're exaggerating, if they're insecure, if they're subtly testing your boundaries. 3 sentences later, you can already see the trajectory of the conversation, where it will land, how it will deteriorate, and the emotional motives that will steer it there. But lately, your perception has grown far beyond individuals. You've moved into something deeper, pattern recognition at the collective level. You've started predicting systems, not just people. Group dynamics, corporate failures, friendship implosions, public meltdowns. You can see them forming long before anyone else does. You can step into a company, watch the way people interact for a few days, and already tell which teams are headed toward burnout, which projects will collapse under their own pretense, which leaders are masters of optics rather than substance. You can feel when a culture is rotting beneath the surface, the forced positivity, the slogans that no one actually believes, the strained laughter in meetings. You can read morale like a scientist measures temperature. You've learned that groups behave exactly like individuals, only magnified and slower to adapt. They too have defense mechanisms, denial loops, and emotional blind spots. A team avoids hard truths the same way a person avoids self-awareness. A company hides from accountability the same way an insecure individual hides from rejection. Entire communities develop shared delusions and unspoken agreements about what must never be acknowledged. These are the invisible contracts of collective dysfunction, that we all know but we don't talk about it, rules that sustain false peace. And because you see those patterns, you can spot the collapse before it happens. You can walk into a group of friends and instantly sense who resents whom, who's silently competing, who's emotionally checked out, who's pretending to care, and who's waiting for someone else to implode so they don't have to. You know who's loyal out of love and who's loyal out of fear. You can sense who will leave, who will betray, and who will stay too long because they can't stand being the villain. You read tension in the pauses, guilt in the laughter, and insecurity in the timing of their jokes. You predicted the relationship drama months before it detonated. They called you negative, accused you of seeing problems that weren't there. But you were simply observing reality while everyone else was clinging to illusion. You saw the subtle disconnections, the loss of curiosity, the absence of eye contact, the quiet withdrawal disguised as independence. You saw resentment growing like mold in the corners they refused to clean. You saw them choosing comfort over communication, ego over honesty, and wounds over healing. You saw the business failure half a year before it hit. While others called you cynical, you recognized the fatal cracks, the blind optimism masking denial, the leadership addicted to image management instead of problem solving, the creeping burnout among employees who smiled through their exhaustion. You noticed how accountability was replaced by slogans, how enthusiasm became a performance rather than a reflection of belief. You didn't need a spreadsheet to tell you what was coming. The behavior was already broadcasting it loud and clear. You even saw the friendship ending long before it happened. Everyone thought you were being paranoid, but you could feel the shift, the imbalance of effort, the quiet disrespect that hides in forgotten plans. The way one person stopped listening, stopped showing up, stopped caring, but still maintained the illusion of closeness because admitting the truth would mean confronting guilt. You saw the asymmetry, the slow erosion of respect, the politeness replacing sincerity. By the time the friendship officially ended, you were already long past the grief, because you'd watched it die in real time. You've realized that almost nothing falls apart suddenly. The chaos people call unexpected is just the final stage of a decay that's been happening in silence. People are shocked by explosions only because they ignored the slow burn. But you've learned to hear the burn, the way energy shifts, the way dynamics distort, the way people detach piece by piece before the structure finally collapses. What you've come to understand is that human systems, whether relationships, teams, or societies, operate on laws as predictable as physics. Denial creates instability. Suppression creates volatility. Avoidance creates decay. People like to believe they're complex and unique, but most of them run on recycled emotional software. Patterns written decades ago by fear, trauma, and learned helplessness. Once you understand the code, you can map their trajectory with eerie accuracy. You're not predicting randomness, you're reading inevitability. You've seen enough cycles to recognize them by scent. You can feel a group's emotional temperature the way others feel a draft. You can tell when admiration will turn to envy, when cohesion will turn to hierarchy, when harmony will turn to competition. You've learned that dysfunction always has a rhythm: denial, escalation, rupture, collapse. And once you know that rhythm, nothing surprises you anymore. People like to romanticize intuition, but what you have isn't mystical. It's mathematical. It's years of observation distilled into subconscious precision. You've built an internal algorithm for human nature. You can sense tension forming the way meteorologists sense pressure in the air before a storm. You can detect dishonesty like static on a radio. You can predict collapse the way engineers predict mechanical failure, by listening to the hum, the vibrations, the subtle signs that precede every breakdown. And that's what unnerves people most about you. It's not that you're cold, it's that you're calibrated. You no longer mistake chaos for mystery. You no longer confuse charm with character or enthusiasm with integrity. You've seen behind the curtain too many times to be fooled by the show. You know that every disaster was visible long before it was declared. Every betrayal was rehearsed before it was acted. Every ending was written in the first chapter. If you were paying attention. You are, always. And that's why your predictions keep coming true. Not because you see the future, but because you never stopped seeing the present. Every time you've been right, it wasn't because you wanted to be. In fact, being right often feels more like a curse than a gift. You would rather be wrong, to see things go well, to watch people grow, to witness relationships heal instead of crumble. But reality doesn't bend to hope, and you stopped mistaking hope for evidence a long time ago. While everyone else watches the movie they want to see, you're watching the one that's actually playing. They're busy wishing for plot twists that don't exist. You're sitting there, analyzing the lighting, the script, and the character arcs, calculating the only logical ending based on the evidence in front of you. They hope things will work out. You run the math on whether that's even possible. They're guided by optimism. You're guided by data. They cling to comforting narratives. You trace the cracks forming beneath them. They trust what people say. You watch what people do. And because of that, your predictions hit with unnerving accuracy. Not because you're guessing, but because you're paying attention. You're not negative, you're just aware. But awareness is uncomfortable in a world that depends on denial to function. They think you're pessimistic because you don't buy into their delusions. They think you're cynical because you recognize patterns instead of pretending every situation is new. They think you're paranoid because you remember what experience has already taught you. What they call negativity is simply your refusal to lie to yourself. Your conclusions aren't fueled by fear, they're grounded in evidence. But when people build their lives on denial, truth starts to sound like hostility. You've realized something that most people never do. Accuracy and optimism rarely coexist. The clearer your perception becomes, the less you can romanticize what's broken. In a culture addicted to good vibes only, honesty looks like aggression and realism looks like betrayal. The world punishes people who refuse to play along with its collective self-deception. People would rather accuse you of being cold than admit they're the ones living in fantasy. And yet, you've also learned the hardest truth of all. You can't save people from the patterns they're committed to repeating. You can see the impact coming long before it hits. You can explain the consequences, lay out the logic, and warn them exactly where their choices are taking them. And they'll still walk straight into it, eyes open, pretending they don't know. Because humans aren't driven by logic. They're driven by emotional loyalty to their own cycles. They are addicted to the familiar, even when the familiar destroys them. You've learned that pain repeated feels safer than peace untested. So you stop trying to intervene. You stop playing savior. You understand that prediction without power is torture. Front row seats to a tragedy you can't stop. Watching people implode exactly as you said they would isn't satisfying. It's soul-draining. It's the helplessness of clarity, knowing the storm is coming and realizing they'll curse you for saying so until it hits. Then when it does, they'll go silent, look at you differently, and you'll see that flash of recognition in their eyes. You were right again. And you'll feel no victory in that moment, only the weight of understanding. But this ability doesn't just extend outward. The same mechanism that decodes everyone else's behavior also monitors your own. You've learned to detect your own patterns with the same ruthless precision. You can sense when you're about to make a mistake because the emotional texture of it feels familiar, the same mental rhythm that's preceded your past regrets. You notice when you're slipping into an old version of yourself, chasing validation, ignoring red flags, romanticizing chaos. And this time, instead of letting it play out, you stop it before it begins. That's your real evolution. Not predicting others, but predicting yourself. Seeing your own trajectory with enough clarity to course correct before you lose years to a loop you've already lived. You've learned to recognize the earliest signs of self-sabotage, the tone of your inner dialogue, the justifications you start building, the excuses that always precede collapse. You've become your own early warning system, interrupting the cycle before it gains momentum. That's not coldness, that's mastery. And that's the part no one sees. They think you're some detached analyst, always forecasting disaster. They don't realize how deeply you've turned this awareness inward, how your mind constantly scans for integrity gaps between your values and your actions, how you've stopped chasing the comfort of illusion even in yourself. You've learned that the real discipline isn't seeing what's wrong with others. It's having the courage to see what's wrong within yourself and still face it head on. People think you're from the future because your accuracy seems supernatural. But you're not ahead of time. You're anchored in it. You live in the actual present, the one most people can't bear to face. While they escape into fantasies of what could be or delusions of what should have been, you stay rooted in what is. You operate in the raw, uncomfortable now, the terrain everyone else avoids by hiding in hope, nostalgia, or denial. They think you can see the future, but the truth is you just never stop seeing the present. That's all for today. Dear Father, I pray for the growth of my faith. Help me trust you even when physical evidence is lacking. Let me believe in your perpetual presence, knowing you will never harm me. I understand that your thoughts for me are thoughts of prosperity and not harm, to give me a good future. Thank you, gracious and eternal Father, for always listening to my voice. I offer up this prayer to you in the name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you, Jesus, for your love and provision. I am grateful for your presence in my life and the abundance you bring. If this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with those who need to hear this message. Leave a comment below about your journey and how you are preparing for your own triumphant return. If you'd like to support our work, please consider contributing through Buy Me a Coffee. This helps us continually improve our content to offer you the best. The link to Buy Me a Coffee is in the description. No gift is too small. Whether it's a penny, a prayer, or a share, your generosity helps spread God's word and brings hope to others. Don't stop here. Watch our next video for powerful revelations about the signs that reveal you are the chosen one. We've enjoyed following this spiritual journey with you. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Keep shining brightly and embrace your destiny with courage. See you next time. Blessings to all the beautiful souls from the Enlightened Wisdom.